According to the Portland Police Museum, there are 29 police officers who have died in the line of duty. The most bizarre of these has to be Ralph H. Stahl. Shortly before 1 a.m., January 27, 1915, Sergeant Stahl was struck in the head by a bullet, dying at the hospital a few hours later. But those are just the basic details. What's the backstory? Originally from Kansas, born in 1861, Stahl worked most of his earlier years as a farmer before relocating to Portland in 1905. Within 2 years, he had joined the Portland Police Force, becoming a sergeant in 1911. He was considered an invaluable and bold member of this force. And by the start of 1915, Stahl had been focused for several months on the apprehension of stolen vehicles, which had become a serious problem in the city as the phenomenon of automobiles was becoming more a part of everyday life. A car a day was being stolen in the city, and many cars that were recovered had been stripped to some degree. This created a fear that some underground organized auto theft ring was active in town. And the citizens of the city with automobiles were paying multiple taxes in addition to the costs of owning and maintaining their vehicles, giving them incentives to be angry about what was becoming an epidemic in their community. This brings us to the early morning hours of January 27, 1915. Stahl had recently recovered one of many stolen vehicles and was reportedly heading for police headquarters at 2nd and Oak Street. Dressed in his civilian clothes, he was traveling west on Yamhill Street, approaching Park Avenue. At this intersection stood patrolman Charles Klingensmith. As the car passed him, still on Yamhill, approaching Broadway, Klingensmith recognized it as a stolen car and screamed out for it to halt. He did not recognize Stahl as the driver, and Stahl did not appear to hear his screams and continued driving on. Following the standard procedure of the time, Klingensmith pulled his gun and aimed for the car's tires to disable the vehicle. What then happened was a 1 in a million event. The bullet Klingensmith fired came up short of the vehicle and struck a manhole cover in the street, deflecting it upwards and into the vehicle, striking Stahl in the head. And at that, the stolen car finally stopped. Ralph Stahl would be the 6th Portland officer to die in the line of duty, but he was also 1 out of 4 who died in less than a 2-year period. 2 other officers during this time died due to dropped service weapons that discharged. A coroner's jury was convened to make sure this shooting was not intentional. 2 residents along Yamhill Street reported hearing Klingensmith yelling for the car to stop, and even the city's police chief, John Clark, held Stahl responsible because he was wearing his civilian clothes and thus could have been confused for the car thief himself. But Chief Clark also criticized Klingensmith for being too willing to use his gun, even though he was following proper procedure. In the end, Klingensmith was rightfully exonerated of any wrongdoing. It was just a sad, tragic accident. But while, historically, the story has been that Stahl was returning a recently recovered stolen car and shot on accident, this excludes an important detail that makes the events of this story even more tragic. It came out at the coroner's jury that Ralph Stahl frequently would drive around town in recovered stolen cars in an effort to test the vigilance of his fellow patrolmen. In this vein, he was literally playing with fire. Knowing that it was standard procedure to shoot at stolen vehicles that didn't stop, even if it was at the tires, this was a fairly reckless pastime to engage in. But then again, Stahl was known for taking chances and putting his fellow officers to the test. This could explain that while the inference was that Stahl was taking the car to headquarters, he was actually driving in the opposite direction of headquarters. So while this event has often been described as just a tragic mistake, the reality is that an officer was out there playing with fire, flying too close to the sun, and he ended up paying with his life.